Talking to sellers on the phone. Is there anything that brings more fear into the heart of an investor, especially a new investor, than having to actually speak to a seller on the phone? The problem is, if we don't talk to sellers, we don't buy houses. So we're going to break it down for you today, how I actually speak to sellers on the phone. That's what we're talking about today on the Sub2Deals show. Hey, Sub2ers, welcome to this episode of the Sub2Deals show, where we talk about all things subject to and creative finance. Now, occasionally, you guys know we will talk about other real estate investing topics, but it's always something to help you with your investing business. Today's topic is calling sellers, talking to sellers on the phone, whether it's cold calling or a follow-up call or whatever it may be. That's one of the main obstacles that we find with students. In fact, it's such a big thing. We actually, a couple of years ago, implemented our cold calling ninja training inside the Sub2MAX Coaching Group, where we role play and actually do live seller calls on the coaching calls with students so they can hear how we handle sellers, how we get deals under contract, how we close deals right there inside the group. It's a big question that we get a whole lot, and so I really just wanted to talk a little bit about that today. Understand that when I am speaking to a seller, especially on an initial conversation or a cold call, my objective is actually just to gather as much information as I can and get the seller as comfortable with me as possible in the shortest period of time possible. Now, for the last 12 years, practically every house that we bought have been from people that we never got to sit down at a kitchen table with or shake hands with. We either talked to them on the phone, we saw them or met them virtually over a Zoom call or something like that. So in those situations, it's really important to be able to establish rapport and just get them to like you, basically, because people that like you will do business with you. So when I'm calling people, I generally don't like to take a whole bunch of time doing that. I want to get down to business as fast as I can, but it's really important that they like you. So we want to get them comfortable with us. We want to start talking terms as fast as we can, and this is sort of a breakdown of how I do that. Let's say that I've pulled a list or something has put someone on my radar that I want to have a conversation with them. So I'm either going to skip trace them, pull their number. For the last several years, Zillow has been a big source of our deal. So their phone number's right there. You just pick up the phone and give them a call. Now, if someone answers, I'm going to ask for the owner. I want to make sure I have the right person on the phone. And if the owner's name is listed in the listing, or you have it, and let's just say in this case it's Joe Smith, I'm just going to ask for Joe. Okay, I'm not going to be too formal, but you can bet, even using Zillow, I've already pulled up all the information on PropStream. I already know a lot about the house. So if Joe answers the phone, once I have him on the phone, then I just ask him to tell me something about the house. Now, yeah, I know a lot about the house already. I'm looking at it on Zillow or Craigslist or wherever it may be. I've pulled it up on PropStream. I know more probably about the house than the guy living in it does. I know square footage, how much he bought it for, who his mortgage is with, what his payments are, what he owes. So I have a lot of information. And I may let them know that on the phone, but remember, my objective is to develop rapport. And one of the ways to do that is to get them talking as much as possible. So even though I'm looking at it, I may say, hey, Joe, I'm sitting here looking at this beautiful property of yours that you have for sale here on Zillow. I see this 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, and has a 3-car garage. Now, is there anything else you can tell me about it? Remember, yes, I'm gathering information, but that's only part of it. I'm looking for hesitancy or resistance or anything less than total cooperation. And that's key to giving me an indication of whether this seller is going to be cooperative or is really motivated. Now, if Joe says something to me like, can't you read the ad? Or what else do you need to know? And he does that in a certain tone, I know there's a good chance it's going to be a really short call and it's probably not something that's going to work out. If they tell me more, now I'm going to let them talk. Remember, part of good negotiation is just letting the other person talk as much as possible. Now, from time to time, I'm going to say something like, that sounds great, or hey, man, that sounds like a fantastic bonus room. Since they can't see me, nodding in agreement or giving them any kind of body language. At least they're getting the verbal positive signals from me. And, that's a plus. That's always a good thing. Once we get through that, I'll then ask them this important question. Joe, this sounds like a great house. Why in the world would you want to sell it? And that's important because I'm trying to get to the root of the problem. Why, this is a wonderful house. Why are you selling it? And it's the easiest way to ask that question. Sounds like a great place. I would never sell a house like that. Why are you wanting to do it? Then just listen, okay? And this is almost where you will certainly find out if this is going to be a seller that's going to deal with you. Now, I like to listen for things like, well, I'm getting a divorce. I really need to sell the house. I got a job transfer. I have to move next month. We're building another house. We don't want to make 2 house payments. Remember, we're listening for motivation. There are a ton of variations, but these are some of the more common ones that are going to let you know that you're dealing with a motivated seller. Now, if you hear Joe say something like, well, we're just testing the market, we're thinking about buying another house, then that's probably an indicator there that they're not super motivated. Now, not always, but chances are. Anyway, if the signals and the reason for selling sound like there may be some motivation, my next step is to find out how soon they want to get it done. So I'll say something like, okay, Joe, I see what you're saying. If we can come to an agreement, how soon would you like to get this done? Again, remember, I'm looking for more sooner than later, and that's always a good sign. By saying something about us coming to an agreement, I'm planting this subliminal thought that we will come to an agreement and Joe's going to be able to sell his house. And these things are really important. Okay, so Joe's told me he needs to move for job transfer and he'd like to have this closed by the end of the month. So now I'm going to move on to asking some questions about financing. Now, I know that Joe is asking $179 for his house, and my knowledge of the area and a quick look at some comps tell me that this is within guidelines, but it's on the high side. Okay, still something we'd be interested in doing, but he is asking for top market value. So I'm going to ask something like, Joe, there's probably some financing on this property. Can you tell me more about it? How much do you currently owe? Now, if I'm asking, if he says, well, why do you need that information? I just tell him that we have several ways that we can buy, and knowing the financing that's in place, if there is any, will let us make the most favorable offer to him. Okay. Now, of course, if he refuses to tell me, we can end the conversation there. But if they share the information, then I'm going to continue. And the monthly payment is, and does that include taxes and insurance? And the interest rate is that a fixed rate loan? I'm going to gather all of this information that I can. Is it a 30-year note? Do you remember what year that you got the loan? Now, if he cuts me off at any time or refuses to answer the questions, I, again, just reiterate that this information is important into us making the most beneficial offer to him possible. He may say something like, we need all cash. What does that matter? And my comment in that place would be, well, Joe, again, there are many ways to sell. If we can get your house sold right away, like you say you need it to be done, aren't you open to hearing of some other ways to get things taken care of? So again, we're open to listening and presenting an offer that works for him. And if he's open to listening, then we'll proceed. If at any point it appears he's not interested, or he says something along the lines of, none of this matters, we want all cash, that's it, we will absolutely not entertain anything else, then of course we can cut the call short. So after talking with Joe, it appears that he owes $169 on his house. Now, the loan has favorable terms. We would get a nice cash flow. He's listing it himself because he doesn't have the equity to pay a realtor and any buyer concessions. Okay. So he's got it listed at 179. So at that point, I'm going to ask a really key question. This question has been something that we've asked for years, and it's been really successful for us. And it's going to go like this. Joe, I'm sure you're aware that there isn't much equity here to work with. And I know you've talked to other investors who've made you lowball cash offers because he's told me that in the conversation. But you owe way too much for that sort of thing to work. We can't give you a lowball offer and make that work for you. And the loan in place here won't make it work for anybody. So we have a program that might work for you if your house qualifies. If I could make the payments for you until we could find a buyer to get a new loan, would that work? Now, what I'm looking for is, of course, well, maybe tell me more. And if he says that, then at that point, it's just a matter of working out a few details. We talk about things. I explain how we'll take over the mortgage payments and make them every month until we can bring a buyer in to get a new loan. I don't mention technical terms, wraparound mortgages, subject to. I never mention subject to. I'm amazed at the number of teachers that propose that as actually a way to deal with sellers. Sellers don't know what subject to is. They don't care. Most of the sellers we deal with are simply looking for a solution. At any rate, we tell him that we'll make the payments for him until we can find a buyer, basically. We answer any objections with honest, no beating around the bushes answers. I'll tell you, and some of the questions can be difficult. Some of the questions can be things like, well, what happens if you don't make the payments? And we don't try to candy coat anything. We let our sellers know that if we don't make the payments, their credit's toast. But we've been doing this for a really long time, and we've never had that issue. So we just try to be as honest with them. I mean, sometimes shockingly honest. I think people really appreciate that. At any rate, at that point, we'll make a decision. And if your seller's not willing to do business with you today, never, ever underestimate the value of follow-up. A good CRM, like we use REI Black Book. There are others out there. REI Black Book is the most complete program that doesn't require you to integrate other products with it to accomplish the same thing. So that's why we like it. But if they're, well, I'm not too interested in doing that right now. Okay, Joe, well, what's preventing you from saying yes today? We can pay full price for your house. We can close when you need to close. We can take this burden off of you. What is preventing you from saying yes today? And try to handle that objection. If it gets to a point where I just don't want to do it, okay, Joe, I understand what you're saying. It doesn't work for everybody, and that's okay. Is it okay if I follow up with you, in a couple of weeks, see how things are going? Even if we can't work together, remember, I'm always here to be a resource for you. Offer to help, even if you can't do business with him. That really goes a long way in establishing that trust and rapport that we talked about earlier. And no one, I'm telling you, I've been doing this a really long time, and I can count on one hand the number of people who've said, no, don't call me back. Virtually everyone is going to say, sure, check back in with me. And then they're going to go in an automated follow-up sequence. And I'm basically going to forget about Joe until he calls me back and, in a month or whatever, and says, listen, we really got to get out of town. We haven't sold this house. Can you still help me? And sometimes the follow-up, the call back is 6 months from now. Sometimes it's a year later. Sometimes it's a few days. So don't ever underestimate the value of follow-up. I'm telling you, you'll get a lot of deals from follow-up. So make sure that you're handling that. Listen, this is the way that I handle sellers and have for a really long time. It works for me. It may not work for you, but I guarantee you something very similar to this will. The main thing I want you to take away from this today is don't be afraid to talk to a seller. They're just human beings like you are. They have an issue in a lot of cases where they really need to sell. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're not super motivated. You won't know until you get them on the phone. We look for key indicators in our cold calling and our Zillow sales. We're looking for houses that the pictures indicate that it's vacant. Maybe it's been on the market for at least 90 days or longer. Maybe there's some other factors. When we pull up PropStream, which we use every single day, we're looking for how much they owe. Maybe it's over finance. Maybe there are tax liens. PropStream will uncover all of that for you. We're looking for those type of things that indicate motivation. And, a lot of times those are going to be the ones that we can actually do deals with, but you don't know until you get them on the phone. They're just human beings. If you're nice, almost always they will be nice. And so what if they're not? Okay. If someone is really nasty to you, if they're really ugly with you, it doesn't cost anything to say, hey, Joe, it sounds like we can't work together. That's okay. Listen, have a great day and best of luck selling your house. If you need any help, you've got my number. Give me a call. Like I said, if we can't work together, it's okay. I'll be glad to be a resource for you to help you in the future. And then just end the call. Move on to the next person. Don't be afraid. If you don't have leads, you aren't going to buy houses. If you aren't buying houses, you're never going to make it as an investor. So get out there, do some things, call some sellers, buy some houses. Okay, don't be afraid. Listen, guys, if you want to learn more about Subject 2 and creative finance, we've got a couple of ways you can do it. If you're new or you're on a budget, there is $7coaching.com. Where else can you get real estate investing coaching for $7 a month? I answer questions. I provide you with documents and forms that you need. We do a live every week on some sort of training. Check us out at $7coaching.com. And also, if you're looking for something a little bit more deeper, a little bit more detailed, there's our Sub2MAX Group Coaching Program. We have 3 times a year in-person masterminds. As part of this group coaching program, we do over a dozen live trainings each and every week with some of the best trainers in their fields, whether that's lead generation, social media marketing, insuring Sub2 deals and creative finance type deals, PropStream training, just all types. If you need it as a real estate investor, then we cover it for you in Sub2MAX. So appreciate you being here with me today at the Sub2Deals show. Get out there, talk to some sellers, and buy some houses. We'll see you next time.